Let's bring in Ed Snyder, equity analyst and managing director at Charter Equity Research. Ed, thanks for being with us. Those comments that John just reported on 5G, that revenue is going to ramp up in the next quarter, 10% of overall mix will be 5G devices in 2020. Is that what you were expecting?
Yeah, I believe that'll probably be the case. China's deploying at full tilt at this point. In fact, more aggressively than we or most of the industry had expected even a couple of months ago. And then, of course, Korea is doing it too. The U.S., not so much. And Japan's doing it. So, yeah, you get these kind of fluctuations around the launch of it. The question isn't so much how many devices, but for Qualcomm, what's the mix? And in terms of how many of those devices are going to use their parts. Because because China is ramping so hard and they're shutting down 4G development and putting it all behind 5G, and Huawei's doing quite well there, and Huawei now has access to American components in the RF space, you're probably going to see a bigger mix of products out there that don't use Qualcomm's products. Huawei doesn't use Qualcomm's basebands, and they're the leader. So you got to dig into those numbers to understand how much all these big picture numbers actually benefit Qualcomm.
The licensing business better than expected for the quarter as well. Would you call this a turnaround or a recovery?
No, I mean, they adhered to a new accounting standard that lets them estimate their licensing revenue instead of relying on one quarter to pass and use reported numbers. So you've got a little bit of fudge there. This is a pretty much inline report. The little bit of upside they did see relative to guides was due to licensing, which, again, is an adjustment. The problem with the licensing story, and it's kind of significant for a number of investors, is they weren't being paid royalties by Apple through most of last year. If you go back and look at how much royalty revenue they were getting when Apple was paying, and then looked at what they weren't getting when Apple was gone, the numbers we're putting up now look the same as when Apple wasn't paying at all. So it looks like the settlement that they struck with Apple included a very generous cut to Apple's royalty payments, because you're just not seeing the uptick here. As a matter of fact, they gave guidance, management of Qualcomm gave guidance for fiscal year 19 back in 2018, and they're far below that in the numbers they've just posted, because fiscal 19's wrapped up here. And those estimates did not include the settlement with Apple, and they got that. So they're pretty far off the mark from where they thought they'd be in 2018. We'll see how it plays out next year.